Good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to talk to you all tonight regarding working with technology in the UK. Probably the best place for me to start is just to introduce myself. So I've basically been working in technology since I left school. A lot of people have known me through various disciplines over the years. Some people know me as a photographer, some people know me as a consultant to their business. Other people in certain industries actually know me as a venture athlete, something that has been very much part of my life. So I've got this very strange mix where I've worked across a lot of sectors in business, and most of it actually links back to a lot of my years having a great time with adventure sport. So my background is really sort of focused now more on helping businesses grow and helping people to grow in their businesses. So the photography side was really the last 30 years of my life. I was very, very fortunate that I've traveled the world and photographed clothing brands. But really, with the modern era and the way technology is moving in business, I've had a bit of a shift. And probably now the last working years of my life are really going to be full on just helping businesses grow with their technology. It's changing massively. So, but what I hope to deliver tonight is a bit of a basic insight into what we see in most businesses nowadays. The landscape since the pandemic has changed massively. Prior to the pandemic, the adoption of modern technology was mainly seen in startups. If somebody wanted to scale rapidly, they would also use the same processes, but the adoption of new technology was relatively slow. So the pandemic kicked everything on massively, and really, my first slide out of this session tonight is probably going to demonstrate really the main two big players in the working environment that exists these days. Prior to these two massive companies taking sort of precedence over the working platforms that we work with today, it was a bit of a mashup that we had in place between the internet growing and email becoming a day-to-day tool, web browsers becoming a day-to-day tool, and then everything else was a bit of a how do we make this work? So I would say from the early 2000s through really almost up to the pandemic, that a lot of business, apart from very big businesses, were certainly businesses in the small, medium business sectors were a complete mashup of technology, and people were making up as they go along. Nowadays, we really do have two main players. I think if you find yourself in the workplace or looking for work or anything to do with a decent business that isn't a solopreneur, somebody working on their own, then you will find either the Microsoft platform in place or the Google platform in place. Both of these platforms allow you to connect other apps to them. So what you may see when you first go into a workplace is you're being offered tools, web browsers, email clients that aren't either of these, but you can guarantee behind them you've pretty much got Microsoft running most things or Google running most things. Breaking these two down, let me just pop forward a slide. Breaking these two down is quite simple to explain now, but when you come to work, there's quite a big difference. What we see is Google came really into its fore because it was a cloud-only system. Being cloud-only, all the apps we have with Google run in the cloud. There is nothing running on your machine. So what I'm presenting tonight is completely cloud-based. Nothing on my machine. I could throw this machine away, pick up another one, load the Chrome browser onto it, and my whole business world will come back to me. What Microsoft decided to do, they've been in the game way, way longer. Microsoft have been around since we ran apps on a machine. So if you go back 15, 20 years, really the only option was to buy a piece of software. It came in a box, it came with a disk. You loaded the apps onto your machine and you ran those apps on your machine. As we've transitioned into the world of cloud computing, what we have now is Google own the cloud computing space, but Microsoft needed to compete. So Microsoft came up with Microsoft 365. Now, running 365 is very similar to running Google Workspace. But what you also have is people running Microsoft apps still on their machines. So what we've got with Microsoft is you've got a hybrid system, which I think if you're talking cars and you're talking hybrid systems, you think actually this is the best of both worlds. But what we find is in this Microsoft world, it can get quite confusing. And certainly apps you run on your machine and then trying to collaborate with other users has to then be passed up to the cloud and then redistributed out. So what can happen working in a Microsoft environment is you can get a bit confused about where you're creating things, where you're storing things, how to store them, how to share them. It's just a little bit more complex than it is working in the Google system. With Google, you're only ever in the cloud and you can collaborate with anybody that is signed into your system. So there's a bit of a basic understanding that you need to establish if you're going into a workplace. With the Google system, things are really quite straightforward. With the Microsoft, you generally needed to be onboarded really quite well and understand whether you're storing work on your machine or whether you're storing it in the cloud or whether you're storing it in what they call SharePoint and trying to distribute it amongst your team. So quite a fundamental difference between the two platforms. I think there are some other players in this space. You could go into a workspace. There's an Indian product called Zoho that is in this space also. It is growing, but compared to these two, it's fairly minor. But there are other platforms out there trying to get into this space. But really, these are the two that you'll find going into most workspaces these days. Okay, what I've tried to do for you this evening is break this down into some fairly straightforward terminology. What I've done here for communication is to say we're entering the digital hallway. We're in that space where you would normally meet with people, have a chat, exchange information fairly informally. That space now, certainly with people working remotely, working from home, maybe 2 days a week and not in the office. Excuse me. That space has been filled with what we call chat channels. Google has Google Chat. Slack is very, very popular. Really got super strong again in the pandemic. And then on the Microsoft side of things, we've got Teams. These channels can be broken down, so you can have groups of people, you can have individuals, but the idea is that it's like walking across the office and having a chat. Moving on to things like WhatsApp and Signal, they are fundamentally quite different because they don't have the management of the platform behind them. So because they work standalone, what you have with these channels is a very linear way of communicating, and the ability to be able to search from other parts of your ecosystem aren't possible, which is why using things like Google Chat and Microsoft Teams is fundamentally better for a business. WhatsApp, Signal are generally better for an individual rather than a business. I certainly see in my working day, I've got a WhatsApp window open and it's probably as busy as those other channels, but it makes it a lot harder when it comes to working through WhatsApp, because it's designed for individuals. It's not designed for a business. When it comes to meetings, obviously tonight we're on Zoom. We've got Google Meet, we've got Microsoft Teams also. It's become the modern meeting room. The pandemic kind of drove this. All these products, Zoom, I think, came to the forefront in the pandemic. Google's Meet product was very, very basic pre-pandemic. It worked fairly well, but it certainly wasn't easy to get into by everybody. Microsoft Teams was a bit late to the game in the pandemic, but actually once they got it there, it was the best free app for meetings by far. Zoom limited you to 40 minutes. The Google Meet wasn't great because you had to have a Google account to get into it in the beginning. But when Microsoft Teams, they made the free version in the pandemic, and it really was by far the best tool for meetings. So those still are really the main players. Again, you can find other platforms out there that use meeting tools. We see in a lot of CRM systems that meeting tools are available, but really, if you get used to Zoom, which you can see tonight that we all try and find our way between. I'm not very strong with Zoom. I use a lot of Google Meet. I use a lot of Teams. I think once you break out into other platforms, you're just playing these games of trying to work out all the little idiosyncrasies of the different platforms and actually trying to make them work. So those really are our main players at the moment. I've got a little cultural note on the bottom of there. I've got a team of people that work with me in India, and it's great because they feel very much part of my office, and the reason they feel very much part of my office is the camera on. With the camera on, it feels like you're stood in front of somebody. It's really easy to understand them better because you can see their body language. So that little note that says, really, if you can keep your camera on, it really does benefit in the working place. So staying with the same idea, the to-do list. So the to-do list is obviously can start with a piece of paper, but what we have in the modern working environment are project management tools. Now, Asana, ClickUp, Trello, Monday.com that I've listed out there, it's all based around a methodology called task-based working. And the idea with task-based working is that you can build up sets of tasks to complete certain either a project or anything that's repeatable. And the beauty of task-based working and why it is being adopted so much now is that you can protect the future of your business by building sets of tasks. By having these sets of tasks, if somebody leaves the business, the next person that comes in to do that job can just pick up the set of tasks and follow the list, and they just work their way through the tasks until that particular job is done. We're seeing it more and more and more. I've noted there that we've got things like ticketing systems like Zendesk and Jira, which are generally seen for managing tasks. With ticketing systems, the idea is that somebody is coming in and contacting, and then you have a management tool that allows you to follow a set of tasks until that ticket is closed. I'm sure many of you have had to contact support systems to do this, but what we're seeing mainly now is the to-do list project management is being managed by task-based systems. So that's something that I would say is now becoming very, very commonplace. A little bit of a those platforms I've listed out there. What you will also see is the stronger ones of these use things called templates, and templates are where they offer you a set of tasks all wrapped up to complete a specific job. So that's something you will see if you're using a task-based system, and you're certainly being asked to create sets of tasks for people to work by, is the template system. Okay, the filing cabinet. So probably going back to the Microsoft and Google arguments of, which one is better, who likes to use one over the other. What we've got is, now we're working mainly in the cloud. All your files that you work with are stored in the cloud. One of the main things that we try and promote in businesses is that rather than individuals owning business data on their machines, that the business data is stored in the cloud. And with cloud storage, you use sets of permissions to give different people and different groups of people access. So what we're seeing is that rather than people building or doing their work on their machine, saving it on their machine and sending it by email and being shared as an attachment on an email, we just build one document that lives in the cloud, and everybody goes to the cloud to use that one document. What that does is stops versioning, and that is where you have a file on your machine, somebody else has another version of it on their machine, and then you're trying to work out which version you're working by. By pushing all that work into the cloud and only having one document, and people go to that one document, that is just a way to get past the problems of what versioning has done to us over the years. Microsoft have OneDrive and SharePoint. OneDrive is your individual drive on your machine, so generally everything you own lives in OneDrive. SharePoint is to collaborate with the team. Google Drive actually has the same. I've not listed it on here, but Google Drive has shared drives, and it has My Drive, which is pretty much the same idea. The way all Google's apps work, because they're running in the cloud, you can access any of their apps from the drive system. So it's like being in the filing cabinet and being able to do the work in the filing cabinet. It's quite impressive the way Google have set that up to work. Dropbox is an old favorite. I think I had Dropbox probably going back over 15 years. It was one of the early easy ways to distribute work between each other without emailing it. So Dropbox has been around for a long time, is very, very popular, and it means you don't need to stick to conforming with what either Microsoft or Google offer. I would also say there are probably hundreds of options for cloud storage. I've given you 3. Dropbox kind of represents all the others, but it's probably one of the main ones that's been around, almost feels like forever now. Okay, so Workspace specific. What we're also seeing now is there's certain parts of the business like HR. I would say in terms of platforms and systems that are used in the business, this has probably been one of the slowest to gain adoption. But certainly now that HR specific tools are available, a lot of the things that was paperwork or very manual systems has been replaced with HR portals. There's probably, I would say that the main place you'll see this in the working place is, like I've listed out, vacation, booking your vacation, looking at what you've been paid, your personal details. So if you move house or you change your phone number or your personal email address, you can log all that in the HR portal. It's now becoming pretty much commonplace when you join a business that part of the onboarding process into that business will be taken and managed mainly by their HR portal. I've listed time tracking on here as well. It's funny, time tracking does relate a little bit more back to the task-based working side of things. So on here, I've marked it out is if you get paid by the hour, you may have to clock in and clock out, and that is definitely the case, and definitely where tools like Toggle, Clockify, but time tracking also gets built in to HR portals, especially if your work is a clock in and clock out style job. But it also gets linked into project management, because if you time your tasks when you're working in a project, what it does, it gives the business a lot of intelligence to sell intelligently. So you will see time tracking not only in clocking in and clocking out, where they're managing your time so they can pay you. You'll see it in the space of task-based working. And here they're not really looking at you coming into work and the work you're doing. They're trying to gain intelligence on how long it takes to do a set of tasks, which means the business can be way more efficient at selling that product to whoever's buying it. It allows them just to build up business intelligence. So you will find time tracking not only in clocking in, clocking out scenarios. Okay, there's a few tips on here, and these are fairly generic. I think my kids will probably, I've got kids between 9 years old and 15 years old. If they want to know anything, they put it in a search bar. And actually, I would say a large chunk of my time at work these days is when somebody asks a question and you don't know the answer, it goes into a search bar. The search bar is your friend. I think if you're in a modern working environment and you don't understand something or you're not sure about something, that search bar is going to help you out every single time. When you're working in one of the platforms, and let's say you're in cloud storage and you're not sure where to look for something, you will find a search bar in that tool as well. So search bar will give you the ability to find anything in cloud storage. The search bar in your email will give you the ability to find anything in your emails. And actually, you'll find this across a whole list of different types of software that you use in your business. Is you can the search bar, as I've said, is your friend. It will empower you to do almost anything, and is always your first step. And as I've said before, asking for help. It's really do make the search bar your friend. It's a really powerful tool. I go on to say about language support here. Most of these tools, certainly Google and Microsoft, and I would say any other cloud-based tool, will allow you to change the main settings for yourself into your native local language. I would say most of them cover most of the languages that you can think of. It's definitely easier. I'm here working in Germany at the moment, and I can go to a machine, and if they're running cloud-based tools and they're running it in German, with change a couple of settings, and all of a sudden the working environment's back in English for me, and you can just carry on working. So that was a lot harder when apps were based on machines, but now we're in the world of mainly running cloud computing tools. You will find language support is excellent. So if you don't know where to find that, I would ask any administrator in the business to point you in the right direction. It's normally in the user settings, but you can flip almost whatever you're doing into your language. I would say on language support as well, browsers are very good at translating documents. So if you've been given a link to something and you get a page of information, most modern browsers will have a button somewhere that will, with a click of that button, it'll produce a drop down, and you can say you want to translate from this to that, and it will translate pages of what you're looking at on the internet as well. It's almost everywhere nowadays. So I think language support is quite strong everywhere. AI assistants, the wonderful new kid on the block, AI. So I would say most webinars and product updates that I sit through these days, now we're in 2026, most things have got some form of AI agent tool built into them. And a bit like the search bar, they're becoming the tool that not only with the search bar, you're allowed to, it's giving you the ability to search through something that you're in. What you're finding with the AI assistants, that if you're in the Microsoft platform or the Google platform, you can search right across your platform for information, and it will even gather information. So a good example I would use is I could have a Google Drive system with a whole bunch of files in it. Maybe those files are financial reports, and for each month. What these AI assistants are capable of doing is you can say to it, look at that whole folder and everything in there, add it all up for me. And so they take the sort of searching ability in the inquiry level to a much, much higher level. You will see this absolutely everywhere, almost in every tool appearing. If it's not there this month, it'll probably be there next month. It's really changing fast and really changing the way we work fast. And I would say the quicker you can get used to using AI tools and AI assistant tools, it will give you a lot more power in the workplace just to be able to find what you need and bring together information that might be a little bit spread out for the old style search tools. So as I say on there, it's summarizing long emails. I think every meeting we do now is recorded. At the end of that meeting, you not only get the recording, you get the transcription of it, and you get a summary, and you get action points. This is 3 years ago, we weren't working like this. Now, what AI assistants are bringing to the workplace is quite incredible, and really does empower you in the workplace to work smarter. So definitely an area to focus on if you're moving back into the workspace. Okay, right. This is quite an interesting subject. We call it the alphabet soup. There's a few pages of this, and I'm not gonna go through every single one in detail at all. I'm going to leave this deck available for you all, so you can read through these. But unfortunately, with the world of technology, there's a lot of multi-word things that get broken down into acronyms. I would say the financial world does this, the marketing world does this. There's a lot of people that do this, but the technology world is absolutely full of acronyms. I've listed quite a few out here across. I'm just going to flick through a series of slides just to show you, but what we've got here is stuff that you will see and find almost on a daily basis. People talking about it on a daily basis. This small list here is really all about accessing your computer systems and some basic ones like IT, which is probably the widest known one across the whole alphabet soup. But we've got types of software systems, SaaS, software as a service. Again, now the apps have been moved up into the cloud for cloud working. SaaS systems are what a lot of us are using day to day. OS, operating system, that goes back to when I left school. Operating systems have been around since we started grouping ones and zeros together and actually making systems run on a computer. So that's about as old as the oldest acronym that you'll probably get out of all of these. And then you're going to find very common things like CRM for the customer relationship management systems, human resources, ERPs for bigger companies that are trying to pull all their resources together, and project management systems. There are many, many more of these. Probably best when you hear one, search it or ask the person if they don't explain it to you what it is. There's, I would say, when you hear acronyms being used, do not be scared to ask what they are. I think it's very polite if you're using acronyms yourself in a meeting. The first time you use it is just to explain what it means, spell out the words, and then you can continue to use the acronym. But honestly, this list could go. I could make this list probably 20 times longer than it is. But there's some basic ones in here that we see day to day. So yeah, there's modern tools, AI. There's some much more recent ones, and then the PDF is almost become standard in passing documents around. That was originally, PDFs were originally designed for print. It was a way printers could receive information, but it's become the complete norm now for passing documents around. So, okay, so yeah, that's my little pro tip on the end is just saying exactly that. If you don't know an acronym, it's perfectly okay to say that you don't know what it is and ask for it to be explained. Don't be scared to do that. And yeah, if you're using one, just explain it at the beginning of the meeting, and it makes it a lot more simpler for everyone. Okay, but that's kind of a very quick whiz through the world of technology we see in the workplace today. I've wrapped up this with a slide at the end here with some resources that I've found online. Obviously, you can there's many ways to find your resources, but if these that I found on here aren't any good, obviously communicate through the group here, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of help in the workplace. So, and that's the end of my presentation for this evening.